Hey guys, we're going to go through some of the steps on how to take your regular image like this and go through some steps to turn it into an illustration in Photoshop. First, what we need to start off with is a blank canvas, and I'll go through each of these steps with you. This one has all the layers, so it's basically finished. There's some work that needs to be done in the background, but that's about it. Let's go back to step one. To get this, we want to first set up our canvas. So I'm going to go up to File, New, and depending on the orientation of your picture, mine is wider than it is tall, so I'm going to make the width 12 and the height 8. Make sure that this says inches here. Make the resolution 150 and OK. And so now I have my new blank canvas. There's the new document here. I want to open up my picture that I will resize to this. So I need to find my iconic image. So I'm going to go and open up my file. Let's see, here it is. A regular JPEG that I found on here. Best way to get that image to the other blank document is to use my move tool. I'm going to click and hold on to the mouse while I'm going up to this tab, and I'm still holding on, and I'm going to bring it back down here and drop it down. So you can see now my image has been placed on top of that blank canvas now. I'm going to resize it. The best way to resize is to hold shift while you're dragging one of these corner tabs. That way you don't distort it. Otherwise you end up doing something like this and she gets real skinny, or you go the other way and she gets kind of a squashed look about her. So I don't want to do that. I'm going to undo that, and I'll leave it pretty much like it is here. Hit enter on the keyboard, and that will set my image in place. Now once I have this done, what I want to do is click over here on this tab. This is going to create a new blank layer, so I'm going to click on that. So now I have this blank layer here. What I sometimes do is label these so that it kind of describes what I'm about to do on this layer. So on this one, I'm going to do the outline. So I'm going to type in outline over here. Alright, so I'm going to be working on this layer. I don't want to draw or paint or do anything with my original file. I'm going to stay away from that. I don't want to ruin my image. So best tool to work with here is the pencil tool, which you can find underneath your brush. And so if you look down here, you see your brush tool. You right click on it and you'll pull up your pencil tool. Typically I work with the size of about 4 or 5. I'll enter 4 right there. And to make this look good, best thing to do is to zoom in really close. Alright, so I'm going to start to trace. Now I don't want to trace with white because that'll make it difficult for me to see later. So what I'm going to do is go back in my history, change it to black, and start to trace the profile of my image. And this is the most time-consuming part, I think. But as long as you do a good job here, the rest of your image will end up looking just fine. It'll look really good. So these are the steps. Basically, you want to end up with a nice, good outline. From your image. Now if you mess up, easy thing to do, I can click E on the keyboard, bring up my eraser tool. That's a ginormous eraser tool. I don't really want to do that. Resize that. I can go back and just erase that. You have your adjustments here you can make it a hard edge. That way it erases exactly what I want. So I'm going to continue with my pencil tool now. This is where the bamboo tablets really come in handy because you can get the feel that you're actually drawing it. Right now I'm using the mouse. I'm not really sure why. on the contour of my subject here. Now, what I want you to do is kind of every now and then back up.
I leave my bag in here. It's too heavy.
So here you can back up and kind of turn off your picture image, see your progress. That'll help you along the way. Once you get into more of the details, you can really check it out. But remember, zoom in as you're tracing. Tend to have a steadier line once you're up close and you're following something rather than trying to trace it when you're looking at the whole picture. So here, now some of these details are going to be kind of blurred because you are zoomed in so close. So just try the best you can. I'm going to zoom back again. Turn this off and check your progress. Zoom back in. I'm Control plus and Control minus to do that. Tricky part is the nose. A lot of times you're not really sure exactly what to trace for the nose. I feel that if you just keep it simple, it usually works best. Try not to overdo some of your details. If you have eyes, what I would suggest is adding in a little bit of a highlight on the eyes, like this right here. I want to circle that because that helps the eyes later, makes them look more alive, not just colored in dot. Okay, so I'm going to kind of fast forward through some of this and show you the next step. So you can kind of get the idea what I'm going to end up doing. For hair, not only would I trace the outline, the profile of the hair around the outside, but I would also suggest tracing some of the hair around the inside. So I would follow some of this. But also, once I finish that, I'll go back and add in some of these lines just so you get the idea of which way the hair is flowing. And remember to keep backing up. Background, if you have a pretty simple background, I would go ahead and trace that too. Otherwise, you can make it a solid color. So I'm going to turn this off and see how it's coming along. And I'm pretty happy with that. Next step, what we would do, so let's say I have all my outline finished. I'm going to move on to the next step and show you how to build up on your paint layer. So just kind of imagine that these aren't here for right now. I'm going to take my outline layer, I'm going to right click and duplicate it. This one I'm going to label paint. Put OK. And so now essentially I have two of the same exact layer. So I'm going to turn off my outline one for now. And I'm basically going to be going back and forth between my paint and my image file. And so here, what I want to do is use my magic wand tool, and I want to check these two boxes here. Contiguous basically means it's going to stay within the lines. So it's very much like a coloring book. If I want to paint her shirt, I'm going to select that area and make sure that all the parts are selected. I can see that one little bit here is not. And so what I can do is hold shift and click on that, and that includes it as well. So I have it selected. I know the area I want to paint. I'm going to go select my picture file and my color selector, and I'm going to use this little eyedropper and click on the shirt color. Click OK, and you see that it changes it now to that exact color. I'm going to go back to my paint layer, use my paint bucket tool, which is right here, and I'm going to paint that in. Now it didn't include that part there, so what I want to do is uncheck contiguous with my paint bucket and paint that in as well. So it's going to be a flat layer of paint, very simple looking, very much like a coloring book. Next, while on this layer, I'm going to choose my magic wand again. This time I'm going to select her face. Now a lot of times this happens, you might have similar colors in different parts of your picture. So her face, I would make the same color as her neck here as well. So I'm going to hold shift, click on those two areas to include them, go to my image file, go to my color selector, pick an area of the face, probably not the darkest area and not the lightest, somewhere in between, click OK, go to my paint layer, use my bucket tool, and paint those in. So I want to keep doing this, just like a coloring book. Go through the different areas and start to paint in those different sections separately. So now I'm going to stop, and I think as you keep going on,
Good morning, teachers. Please remember that you need to come by the counseling suite if you have a second period class today to pick up report cards to be distributed. Thank you.
okay, so now I'm going to show how to turn this paint layer into one with shadows. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this example here. Yes. And so now I have my paint. Say it's all finished. I've gone through and filled in all the parts that I need colored. Now I want to go to and add a layer for shadows. So again, I don't want to ruin this. I don't want to ruin my outline. I'm going to duplicate my paint layer. This one I'm going to call shadows, and turn off my paint layer. They're essentially the same thing right now. So I treat this a lot like I did my paint layer. Use the magic wand tool. I'm going to choose the shirt here. Remember to include that little spot. This time I'm going to pay more attention to, I have to turn that one off to see my image now. I have to pay attention to the shadows. So the colors I'm going to select this time are going to be the darker shadow colors here, like I found right here in her collar. I'm going to go back up to my shadow layer. This time I'm going to change my pencil tool to the brush tool. Brush tool you can change and customize however you need to. I usually click up here and make sure that my brush is as far down on the left side of the hardness slider. That way it's really soft. The size I kind of customize as I go. The opacity is basically how thick of a layer of paint you're putting down. I drop this down to usually underneath or below 20. And then the size, I use the brackets on the keyboard to adjust. Good thing about keeping this selected is that once I start painting these shadows in, I can paint outside of this. It's not going to do anything. It's only going to affect the areas that I have selected. So I can adjust the sizes for these different creases on her collar here. Add some darker shadows by just clicking and layering some more on there. Usually turn this off and see about what I need to do. So I can see that there's more shadows down on this end. I can make this larger and kind of brush in some softer areas here and around the edges of her shirt. She's got these little creases here on her corners or on the folds of her shirt or jacket. I'm not looking to make it exactly the same, but I am trying to get it to look somewhat real. Kind of get the impression that this is an illustration that we made from a picture. It's not going to look exactly the same, but that's alright. It's just kind of the style of this type of art. So now I would say this jacket's basically done. What I would do now is choose another area. I'm going to go back to her face, remember to include the neck here. I'm going to turn off this, go back to the image, choose color that's maybe in the shadowed area of her face, click OK, come back to my shadow layer, use my brush, and very lightly on the face. You gotta be very careful with the face because it can get real splotchy looking. This is where it's really important. I usually work very lightly, very slight changes because it looks pretty bad when you overdo it on the face. These areas right here I know are darker because they're kind of in a little shadow area underneath her jaw. So those kind of darken up. She's got some color on this side of her face that's kind of turned away from the camera. A little bit around the jawline and a little bit right here in the cheek area and underneath her hair on her forehead. And so in her ear as well. I know that there's some darker areas there, but always go back and check. I'm not going to try to get every single little shadow just right, but at least get the impression that you're slowly turning this into something more three-dimensional. So I would do the same thing for the hair. The hair would be a little bit different because I know in her picture there's also some highlights. And so not only would I select this and include all these parts here, I would choose a color that's darker than the something in the shadow area of her hair. Let me go back and try select again. Cancel that. Go back here. Let me turn this off so I can see the actual picture. Select something in the darker area of her hair. Click OK. Turn this back on so I can see what I'm going to paint. Brush tool, I can press B on my keyboard and it'll take me straight there. So in the hair, I'm going to bring this up, make it a little bit stronger. I'm just going to put in some shadows where I saw them in the picture. So I know she's got some darker areas here, some darker areas towards the back, and on this side of her hair. But she also has some highlights, some lighter areas. So if that's the case, I'm going to go back to this layer, choose one of these lighter colors in her hair, go back to the shadows layer, and kind of look at where some of those are. Towards the front, ooh, that's a little too strong, so I'm going to go back on that. Lower this, back down, add in some highlights around her hair. Just to kind of get the impression that there's shadows and highlights in that area. So when I turn it off, you can kind of see, yeah, it's not exact, but it gets the idea. So once I'm finished, basically what I'll end up with is this. She's finished, but I still need some more work here in the background. And I would pick some darker colors and start painting in up there. Once you finish this with one of your iconic images, what you'll end up doing is opening up one of your own images as well and start working on that. Go through some of the same steps from all the way from your main background layer, your image layer, your outline, to your paint, to your final shadows layer. This is my example, so let me delete that. So you'll have these basic layers down. If you need to stop and save your work and you haven't finished yet, make sure that you go to File, Save As, and because we want to preserve these layers and your progress, make sure that you save it as a Photoshop file. until the very end. And even then, what I would do is keep a copy of the Photoshop file, and when you are finally finished and ready to post your image, that's when you would change this to regular JPEG file on the format. So that's basically it for now, and for how to turn in a basic photograph.